Imagine a world where your cells never grow old, where the ticking of time doesn't leave wrinkles on your skin or lines in your mind, where the very idea of aging is rewritten by science. What if I told you that in the laboratories of the future, a discovery is quietly emerging that could fundamentally alter what it means to live, to grow, and to die? Aging has always been considered an inevitable law of nature, a slow, inexorable decline that touches every organism from the smallest bacterium to the largest mammal. Yet, recent breakthroughs suggest that aging might not be a fixed law at all, but a process, a set of biochemical signals that could be recalibrated, paused, or even reversed. For centuries, humans have searched for the fountain of youth, from the myths of Gilgamesh to alchemical experiments in medieval Europe. But today, the search has entered the precise sterile realm of molecular biology, genetics, and neuroscience. Scientists are now beginning to understand the underlying mechanisms that govern cellular aging, from telomeres, the protective caps at the ends of chromosomes, to epigenetic modifications that alter gene expression without changing the DNA sequence itself. Each of these processes is like a signal in a vast, intricate network, a complex system where the energy of life flows through patterns of protein interactions, metabolic pathways, and neural circuits. What we are beginning to see is that aging is not merely damage accumulating over time. It is an emergent property of dynamic biological systems. In other words, the body is not passively deteriorating, it is actively regulating the pace of its own decline. The realization that life itself is a programmable system opens profound philosophical questions. If aging is a process that can be altered, are we, in essence, the architects of our own lifespan? What does it mean to live indefinitely, and how would that reshape consciousness, memory, and identity? At the heart of these discoveries is an area of science that bridges biology and physics, sometimes called quantum biology, which examines how fundamental processes at the subatomic level influence life. Enzymes, proteins, and even DNA appear to operate using principles reminiscent of quantum coherence, where the flow of energy is optimized to prevent entropy from taking over too quickly. In practical terms, this means that the very molecules that sustain life are constantly performing a kind of self-correction, a subtle balancing act that, under the right conditions, could be harnessed to slow or even halt aging. The first hints of this possibility came from studies of organisms that naturally exhibit negligible senescence, such as certain species of jellyfish and lobsters, whose cells seem capable of constant renewal. These creatures do not age in the conventional sense. They maintain cellular integrity, repair DNA effectively, and sustain metabolic function indefinitely. By studying these natural anomalies, researchers have identified key pathways that regulate cellular longevity, such as the role of sirtuins enzymes that influence stress resistance and DNA repair, and the NAD molecule, which appears to act as a master regulator of energy metabolism. When these pathways are activated, cells show remarkable resilience, almost as if they are learning to perceive stress not as damage, but as a signal for adaptation. Here, neuroscience enters the picture in a surprising way. Our brains are not just passive observers of aging. They are active participants in how our bodies perceive time and stress. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself in response to experience, suggests that mental states can influence cellular outcomes. Stress, chronic anxiety, or negative thought patterns can accelerate biological aging by altering hormone levels, increasing inflammation, and disrupting cellular repair mechanisms. Conversely, mindfulness, meditation, and positive cognitive framing can slow biological decay, demonstrating that the mind is deeply intertwined with the body in a feedback loop that governs longevity. In this framework, the brain can be thought of as both a conductor and a filter. It regulates the flow of biochemical signals, interprets environmental stressors, and decides whether to amplify or dampen cellular responses. The metaphor is compelling. The human organism is an energy network, the brain a central processing unit, and thought itself a signaling cascade that influences every cell. If aging can be viewed as a set of modifiable signals, then medical science is approaching the possibility of creating interventions that can reset the system. One line of research focuses on reprogramming cells using techniques derived from stem cell biology. Scientists have discovered that by expressing a few key transcription factors, adult cells can be reverted to a more youthful state, erasing age-related markers and restoring metabolic function. In laboratory mice, these interventions have extended lifespan, improved cognition, and rejuvenated tissues that were considered irreparably aged. The implications are staggering. What if humans could harness a similar process safely? The challenges are enormous, of course. Reprogramming cells carries the risk of uncontrolled growth, cancer, or immune reactions. The timing, dosage, and targeting of these interventions must be exquisitely precise. Yet the very fact that these results are possible in controlled experiments challenges the notion that aging is immutable. Another promising avenue is the use of senolytics, drugs that selectively remove senescent cells that have stopped dividing but secrete inflammatory signals that accelerate aging in surrounding tissues. By clearing these cells, tissues regain function, inflammation decreases, and regenerative capacity improves. In essence, the body's own repair mechanisms are being given room to work optimally, highlighting the principle that sometimes the key to longevity is not to add something new, but to remove what obstructs natural balance. Here is where the twist emerges. The body's protective responses, what we often interpret as weakness or decline, may actually be sophisticated adaptive strategies. A cell that stops dividing in response to DNA damage is not failing. It is protecting the organism from potential catastrophe. Our perception of vulnerability often masks an underlying intelligence in the system, a subtle orchestration by which biology preserves integrity over time. In other words, the very processes we associate with aging are, in many cases, the brain and body's way of keeping us alive. The philosophical implications extend even further when we consider consciousness. If aging can be modulated or halted, what happens to memory, identity, and the subjective experience of time? Our perception of life is deeply entwined with the inevitability of decay. It shapes goals, relationships, and the meaning we ascribe to existence. To live without aging may seem desirable, but it raises profound questions about the nature of fulfillment, motivation, and creativity. Does limitation give rise to purpose? If mortality is postponed indefinitely, how do we redefine the architecture of experience? Quantum metaphors illuminate another dimension of this inquiry. Just as particles exist in superposition with multiple potential states simultaneously, human potential may exist in a range of biological and cognitive configurations. Aging might then be viewed as a collapse of a superposition into a predictable outcome, a finite lifespan. Intervening in this process could allow life to explore a broader spectrum of possibilities, a kind of quantum freedom in biological time. While the science is promising, it is also deeply humbling. The mechanisms governing aging are intricate, interconnected, and resistant to simplistic solutions. They involve DNA repair, protein folding, metabolic signaling, immune surveillance, and neurocognitive regulation, all interacting in ways that are only beginning to be understood. Yet what is remarkable is that each discovery reveals not just vulnerability but extraordinary resilience. Life at its core is a network of feedback loops, redundancies, and adaptive processes that have evolved over billions of years. The potential to influence aging is, in effect, learning to speak the language of life itself. In practical terms, lifestyle interventions remain powerful modulators of aging. Caloric restriction, exercise, sleep optimization, and cognitive engagement all influence the pathways now being targeted by molecular interventions. These practices demonstrate that longevity is not only a matter of laboratory breakthroughs, but also of understanding and respecting the subtle intelligence of the body and brain. The interplay between stress and resilience is particularly fascinating. Short-term stressors like exercise or cognitive challenges act as hormetic signals that strengthen cells and neural circuits, teaching the system to be more efficient and robust. Chronic stress, by contrast, overwhelms the network, accelerating breakdown. The lesson is clear. The body responds not just to the presence of stimuli, but to the interpretation and timing of those stimuli. In this sense, consciousness itself becomes a tool for longevity, as perception can shape biology in profound ways. As research advances, we are beginning to glimpse a future where aging may be understood, measured, and managed with precision. The ethical, social, and philosophical dimensions are enormous. Should indefinite lifespan be universally accessible or reserved for those with resources and knowledge? How would society adapt if humans lived centuries without the decline that currently structures careers, families, and culture? These are not hypothetical questions. They are challenges that will accompany every scientific breakthrough in longevity. Yet, beyond the technical and ethical considerations, there is an almost poetic insight to be drawn. Aging, once considered a tragedy, may in fact be a narrative of resilience and adaptability. Each cellular signal, each neurochemical adjustment, is part of an ongoing dialogue between the body, the brain, and the environment. The discovery that we can intervene in this dialogue does not diminish life's meaning. It deepens it, revealing layers of intelligence and potential previously hidden. The final lesson is both scientific and philosophical. The limitations we perceive, whether in cells, cognition, or lifespan, are often protective adaptations, but they are not absolute barriers. With careful research, disciplined experimentation, and a profound respect for the complexity of life, it is possible that humans may enter a new era of longevity, where the boundaries of aging are not erased recklessly, but explored thoughtfully. As we imagine this future, the most powerful tool may be curiosity itself, the willingness to observe, question, and experiment while remaining grounded in evidence. Perhaps the greatest discovery is that life, in its most intricate and elegant forms, contains within it the seeds of its own renewal. The potential to end aging is not merely about prolonging years. It is about deepening the understanding of what it means to be alive, to perceive, to adapt, and to thrive in an ever-changing universe. So, what would you do with centuries of consciousness, with a body that can adapt and repair endlessly, with a mind that can grow and change without the constraints of cellular decay? How would your perception of time, purpose, and connection shift if aging were no longer a given? These are not just questions for science. They are invitations to philosophical reflection, to envision life at its fullest potential, to participate consciously in the evolution of your own biology. If this exploration of aging consciousness and the future of human life intrigued you, subscribe to MindSpark Science for more deep dives into the mysteries of the brain, the body, and the universe. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and join a community dedicated to exploring the science of possibility, the philosophy of existence, and the frontiers of human potential. Because the story of life is still being written, and the next chapter may redefine what it truly means to grow, to live, and perhaps to never grow old.